Hey everyone, welcome to Modern Bass Applications. I'm Sean Fairchild, aka Combinator, and today we're going to be talking about double thumbing, the double thumb stroke, and the expansion of that into using multiple thumb strokes and multiple pops and things like that to get a lot of really fun, cool patterns. Alright, so before we get into doing all the fancy thumb stuff, we need to talk about free strokes and rest strokes and figure out what you currently do. It's necessary to do a rest stroke with your thumb in order to get the double thumb happening. So free strokes come in a few different flavors, and it's kind of the original way of slapping. You might think of Larry Graham, of course. You might think of Marcus Miller when you think of free stroke thumb up slappers. So that's kind of, your thumb is not necessarily pointed straight up towards the sky or anything, but just a general sort of thumbs up position. That sort of thing. But the free stroke can also be done in a thumb down sort of position. And you might think of guys like Flea or Robert Trujillo, people like that, who slap, they're doing a free stroke, meaning that their finger is bouncing right off the string. After you hit the string, you're not resting on anything. You're coming away and bouncing away right away. So that can be done as a thumb down thing also. Okay, before I go further, I want to say that all the sounds that you're hearing me use in this video, even when there's not an effect, just the compression, the preamp that I'm using, all that, it's all modeled in my Helix, and I've got my Helix presets for sale on my website. If you like anything that you hear and you kind of don't want to go through the editing process of figuring it all out yourself, you can take a shortcut. So check those out on my website. What we need to do is transition to a rest stroke for slapping. So a rest stroke is just kind of a wholly different thing. In fact, in my mind, it is technically a slap because you're forcing the string down, rebounding against the frets with some part of your thumb. That's kind of it, rather than like pulling the string away and letting it pop down, which in my mind is essentially the definition of a pop. So that part's the same, but it's a very different part of your thumb. I'm kind of hitting with the very tip of my thumbnail, and you can think of it a lot more like a pick stroke. So everything changes about the angle of my hand, the angle of my wrist, all that stuff. I'm looking at this as a door handle, a doorknob turning sort of thing. So if you think about the way your wrist turns, if you're turning a doorknob, that's kind of what you want to do. It's not necessarily, there's not a whole lot of motion going on in your shoulder or your elbow. Of course, different people are able to do this in different ways. Everybody's anatomy is different, so you're going to have certain things that work well for you, and other things are going to work better for other people. But the general idea is that I'm going to imagine that there's like a light, like I'm doing nighttime, like, I don't know what this is called, like light photography, nighttime photography. The stuff where you see people do, traces with lights and stuff like that. I'm going to pretend that there's a light on the tip of my thumbnail, sort of like the angle where my thumbnail stops going out and starts curving. And I'm going to imagine it's making an arc like this. So the arc is going in two planes. It's going inwards towards the base, but also downwards towards the floor. So it looks like this when I do it, at least. And if I turn a little bit, so you can kind of get a better view of what my hand is doing. You see it's very relaxed, and I'm coming to rest on the string below, meaning more towards the ground, from the one that I'm targeting. So right now I'm playing the E string. I'm playing A on my E string. My thumb is just really nicely, naturally coming to rest on the A string. This takes a while to get used to. You can see that I'm creating a little bit of space. I have just a little comfortable sort of relaxed bend in my wrist. Rather than keeping my wrist like this, like a lot of thumb down slappers do, I'm kind of creating a little bit of space that's very, very comfortable. And it makes it so that the base of my thumb doesn't come back and mute the string, or some part of my hand doesn't mute the string. When you're doing this style of slapping, when you're doing this rest stroke style of slapping, the majority of your hand needs to be below the target string. So if I'm looking at this E string here, the majority of my hand here wants to be south of that string, and I want to sort of rotate my thumb up above that string in order to strike through it and then come to rest below it. And of course, there's a little bit of setup that's involved here in getting this kind of tone that I'm getting. That's always going to be a part of playing, so it helps to have you don't have to have a ridiculously low setup, but something that's not very high. I'm also using round wound strings. I'm playing a very bright bass, a bright MTD bass. So there's a little bit of that going on there too. If you're having trouble getting the string forced down into the fretboard, you might want to look at your action and see kind of how high your strings are and how your instrument is set up that way. After you get very comfortable doing this, start moving it around and changing strings. Now I'm playing across strings. That's getting comfortable. Now we're going to pick it up a little bit. So it's a very relaxed sort of movement. In fact, one thing that you can do as a way to practice it is start from the resting position. So if you want to slap a note on the E string, start with your thumb just hanging, just loose, no tension, just hanging on that A string. You're really relaxed. And then, I'm just kind of, I don't know what this is. I don't know what move that is. So my thumb is just sort of, anchored there and hanging. There's not a lot of tension in my hand. And then I'm going to turn my wrist outwards and strike through that string that's right above where I was resting. Coming back down to rest. Turning to the side again. So one way that I like to describe this motion is when you're working on anything that's new, it really helps to over-exaggerate it. It doesn't mean you're going to really play like that when you're really doing the thing, but one of the things that I kind of explain to students is when you're really over-exaggerating this, when you're working on it for the very first time, when you're working on it in the style's infancy for you, when you're doing the wind-up, you kind of almost want to be able to see your palm. Like if you had something written on your palm, you'd be like reading a note to yourself, oh hey, I should practice my slapping more often. So that when you're doing the wind-up, you can kind of see if something were written on your hand. This is, of course, very silly. When you actually do the motion, it's much smaller, it's much tighter than that. But to get you used to this door handle turning motion, it's a helpful exercise. It's a helpful thing. Now, let's look at the pop. So popping, when you're using this style of slapping, is really just the recoil from this. So you're turning the door handle both ways. Just your arm is just turning on this axis here. Your wrist is just turning over. So the slap might be like this. The pop then lets you go the other direction and sets you up for the next slap. Look at that. Oh my God, it's a symbiotic relationship. So I'm slapping through the string. If I could find the string, slapping through it. And then I'm not going to pop an octave because you've heard enough of that. So I'm going to pop a fifth. So slap, pop. I'm playing really hard right now. I need to kind of relax a little bit and let you hear and see how this really works. Turning to the side. Very natural, right? Rotating, rolling wrist motion. All right, you guys still with me? Okay. So, you've become a really good rest stroke slapper. You can rest stroke with the best of them. And by the way, you can use this style of slapping for anything that you would slap the other way. It just makes everything much easier. In fact, when we get into the upstroke, that's even more going to be the case. But I consider this an even more productive style of slapping, an even more beneficial technique to learn, because it's more useful all the way, up your neck on all of your strings. If you're doing that free stroke style of slapping, it's really hard to get, much gravity and much volume out of notes that are on your higher strings, higher up the fretboard. But if you're doing this rest stroke style of slapping, ooh, listen to that, quite a difference, right? So you can play all over the neck. And it's a useful style. It works for any string, works any position on the neck. So that alone, I think, is kind of worth the price of entry to study this style of slapping. All right, so we become really good single stroke, downwards, rest stroke slappers. Now, time to start doing the upstroke. The upstroke is as simple as it sounds. So after you get this downstroke down, you just, as if we were popping and rolling your wrist back the other direction. As if we were doing that, you're just going to come back up with your thumb and catch the string that you just slapped on your fingernail. So here's where I should explain that, one, this isn't going to sound exactly the same as your downward stroke slap. That's okay. It's not going to. It doesn't need to. The second thing is that really, if you think about it, this is kind of more of a pop, because in my mind, the definition of a slap, like I was saying earlier, is when you force the string downwards, down towards the fretboard to rebound against the frets, and you get that nice metallic sound. That's what I think of as a slap. A pop I think of as you're pulling the string away from the fretboard, and as you release it, you're causing it to recoil and slam into the frets. So this is really more of a pop. It's just sort of a pop with your thumbnail. So my double thumbing slap stroke is just all in my wrist. It's all in the wrist. You go down, back up by rotating your wrist the other direction. So you see, it's still this same wrist rotation motion. And when you're doing this in that sort of cartoonish way, overblown way, yeah, you can look at your palm when you've done the upstroke. Oh hey, there's a message, shopping list. So you can really get used to this wrist rolling motion. As you get more comfortable, it starts getting faster. So there's no real mystery to the double thumb approach. That's basically what's behind it. Now, start taking this and getting used to moving it across strings. So I'm going to play that same little box pattern sort of thing I was doing before. This time, I'm going to be using double thumb strokes, and I'm going to go 4 notes on each pitch. So I'm going to play A, E, D, B. Had to think about that for a second. A, E, D, B. Don't just get used to playing this on your big, thick, floppy strings that have less tension. Get used to playing this somewhere up higher too. So, for instance, starting on D, on the 12th fret of my D string, I could play that same pattern. It's going to be the same exact motion with your hand. Nice and easy. Okay, that comfortable now? All right, we're gonna cut it in half. So now fewer strokes, half the number of strokes on each note. Move it around. Wasn't quite sure where I was gonna go there. Move it again. Start speeding it up. Fancy there for a second. All right, so that is the idea. Now let's add in the pops. So we're going to play groupings of 3 notes. They might be triplets. We might just be playing groupings of 3 notes. And let's do, I guess we'll go back to doing, we'll start doing octaves because we didn't do octaves before. So we'll start doing octaves now, which also might be a little bit easier for your hand because you have more space between your target strings that you're slapping and popping. So we're going to play the same notes as I started out with: A, E, D, B. And we're going to do a down and up stroke with your thumb on the lower octave and then a single pop on the higher octave with your index finger or your middle finger. You can do, or your ring finger. Whatever finger is the finger that you like to pop with. We're going to use them all eventually. So pick your favorite one now, and we're going to go like this. Now from the side. You may have noticed when I was doing these that I'm not able to do that full cartoonish kind of wrist rolling, wrist recoil action on my thumb up stroke. Why is that? Because if I do that, now I have to rotate my wrist back inwards to get the pop. So I have to start now putting this into the real world. I have to start kind of making concessions and making little adjustments to make this work for adding in the other strokes. So I can only come out a little bit. I can only roll my wrist just a little bit. I can't go, oh hey, what's going on? Can't do that anymore. So this is a great way to play triplets. I mean, it's really fun. You can get this to roll, it's sort of like a banjo roll, and make it really, really fast. And as you get faster, the motion gets smaller and smaller, and you put less and less energy into it. Sometimes it gets quieter. You can move around the notes. So nice, right? So really fun way to do triplets. So here's a good exercise for practicing this. This is something I am just blatantly ripping off from, I think it was the Starlix video. I want to say Starlix is the company that made it, like the 1991 or 1990 instructional video by one Michael Balzari, aka Flea, being interviewed with River Phoenix. It's a classic. I love that thing. I had it on VHS. Kids, if you don't know what VHS is, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. He's got a slap exercise that I actually love. It's really great. I think he explained that it was part of a warm-up that he used to do, in which he did something like, he played fifths and then octaves, and then he turned that high octave note into a new fifth by moving the root note up a fourth. Looks like this. Then you advance up the neck. Start going a little bit faster. So this is actually it's a great exercise for just practicing your single rest stroke slaps and getting those to be fast, because it's kind of tricky to do. But this is really, really good for practicing your double thumbing approach. Thank you very much, Flea. I really don't want to be in trouble with you. It's you know, imitation is the highest form of flattery and all that. Thank you for letting me borrow this warm-up technique of yours to help other people out. What we're going to do now is play that same pattern, but with double thumbing instead of single thumb strokes. So I'm going to go. Faster and higher. Etc., etc. So you keep on going up the neck, go faster as you go. You're looking to get to the point of what I like to do anyway. This is where, you know, Flea's thing ceases, and this is kind of where my own ideology comes in. I like to get to the point where you have reached partial failure and then hang out there for a little while. So I aim for, when I'm doing any kind of warm-up, when I'm doing any kind of exercise, if you stop when you mess up, you're not really ever pushing that point of failure down the line. You're often not really ever getting better. You're just sort of, you know, restarting when it gets difficult. So what we want to do is push that point of difficulty further and further out. The way that I like to think about this is in terms of like lifting weights. So if something is very easy for you, let's say you have a 2-pound weight. And let's say you're a pretty strong person and you can lift a lot more than 2 pounds. But if you have a 2-pound weight and you do like 300 repetitions of a curl or something, or you're lifting a weight, you're pushing a weight on a table, whatever you're doing, if it's really, really easy for you and you just do that a bunch, you're never really going to get stronger. Like, your muscles don't get bigger from doing that. You're doing something that's within your capability. So you need to push yourself to the point of at least partial failure. So when I'm at my top speed or my top stretch or whatever I'm trying to work out, I'm aiming to kind of hit what I want to be doing 75 to 80% of the time. In terms of actual notes, what that means is I'm missing 1 out of every 4 or 1 out of every 5 notes. So when I'm at my maximum speed on this, and actually usually I start at the 12th fret or the 9th fret on the bass, and I go that way as I speed up so that the stretch increases while the speed increases, and when I'm not warm yet, the stretch is smaller and it's easier. So if I'm moving the opposite direction and I'm all the way up here, at the maximum where I'm going to be missing things, I want it to be like this. Yeah, I was all kinds of off time and messing up and probably making stupid faces. But hey, it's the life of a bass player, right? So that's kind of where you want to take that. And I see this exercise as a bar of 16th notes. So this is a bar of 16th notes with the first note being an 8th note. The first note is twice the length of every other note. So if I play this on B, if I start this on B, I'm going to start, my root is B, I'm going to play a 5th above it, so I'm going to play an F sharp. The notes actually don't matter, we're just working with intervals here. I'm playing a 5th and then an octave. And what I'm doing is going 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and So that's a great exercise to get all of that stuff working well with a single pop. Here's where it really gets fun, folks. We're going to start doing double pops. So this is where we get some really cool stuff. We're going to play, we'll do octaves. We'll do octaves right now. What the heck? I'm going backwards on what I said before. So we'll play G, 2 strokes down on the lower octave, or sorry, a down and an upstroke with your thumb on the lower octave, and then an index pop and a middle finger pop. Again, you can use any 2 fingers you like, but those are the fingers I like, on the higher octave G. So it sounds like this. Very exciting. This is, a very big step up in terms of difficulty, in terms of, what we've been doing. It requires even more modification to the wrist rolling, and now it's not as much about the wrist, at least not 100% like it was prior with just double thumbing, just going, up and down. Now we're working with, this thumb has to come up and still leave you in position to grab the string with your index finger and then also with your middle finger. So you might find that you have to modify things. The wrist roll is still there. I'm going to turn to the side again so you can see. So the wrist roll is still there, but it's not as pronounced as it was. It's a little bit easier to do these with octaves than it is to do it with fifths, but you can take this and just move it around, play whatever pitches, whatever intervals you like, and move this around on the neck to practice it. Try to cross strings. As you get faster with this, it starts to sound more like this. Now, what I really like to do with this technique is to take these top 2 plucking notes, to take these top 2 fingers and move them down onto an adjacent string. So now we have things like fourths available, fifths, flat sixths, major sixths, if you can reach that far. But what I really like to do with this is play a lot of fifths. I think that's a really great sounding thing. Cool, right? Very cool. Now we're getting into this sort of borrowing that prog and prog metal guitarists have done over the last few years from the bass world, which is really kind of interesting. And they've taken a technique that, some have derided for being really, it can be really cheesy at times, and doing this sort of disco octave. That sort of thing. Taking the concepts and then apply them in whole new ways. So here's where it gets really cool. We're going to take these different strings that we're slapping and popping on. Now we're going to condense them onto the same string. This is really tricky at first, so practice slowly. this is how I was playing the verse and the chorus from my song Things That Should Be that I opened the video up with. I'm going to show you how that part goes in just a moment. Now if we take sort of a step back for a moment and add in other interesting left-hand options such as hammer-ons, the hammer-on from nowhere. It's really just a tapped note. If we do that, now add in these strokes we have, even with just the thumb, the forefinger, and the middle finger, we can start to play things such as Animals as Leaders and Infinite Regression. That starts with 2 tapped notes. So with your left hand, there we go, it's kind of a little weak sounding without distortion. In fact, why not add some? So I'm playing G flat and D flat. We have these 2 tapped notes, and on the D flat, after I play that note as a tap note with my left hand, I'm going to come down and do a down and up thumb stroke. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And my first and second finger pops are going to happen on the G string. So I'm going to move those. We're kind of going back to the pattern of doing the thumb and the fingers on adjacent strings and playing fifths. So I'm going to play a fifth above that D flat first, and then I'm going to play the octave of the G flat. Then I'm going to come back and just play the octave of the G flat. These are sextuplets. These are fitting 6 notes into the space of what would be a quarter note. Actually, in the case of the song, it is. In the case of an infinite regression, that's how this figure works. Of course, you can take it and put it into a groove or put it into any other kind of thing that you like. Let me do that from the side here again. Didn't quite nail it, but that's the idea. All right, so final step here to add another option to what we're doing is to incorporate another popping finger. Of course, we could be doing more than just a down and up thumb. We could be doing three thumb strokes or 4 thumb strokes and then 2 pops. We could be doing all kinds of things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. We could do 3 strokes and 1 pop, or 3 strokes and 2 pops. I had to work at that one. That's kind of tough. But adding in this third finger allows us to obviously get 3 pops. So we can get, using a single pair of down and up thumb strokes and then 3 pops, we can get groupings of 5, which I like a lot. Alright, so I'm going to show you guys how to play that riff of Things That Should Be that I started the video with. And it uses that ring finger in, not the whole riff, but in parts of it. Now I could spend way more time than I actually have time for breaking this down harmonically and giving you the exact specific rhythms and counts that I'm playing. But rather than do that, since you've got this on video, you can pause, you can zoom in, you can do all kinds of stuff. I'm just going to play the parts for you slowly so that you might be able to kind of mimic it and play it back. So the part that I'm playing starts on A, it goes down a whole step to G, has kind of a funky little minor third to major third hammer-on in there. This is how it sounds slowly. almost harder to play that slow than fast. A little bit faster. The first figure that I'm doing is, it's really pretty much just one pitch. Only the first note is really an A, and everything else is essentially a ghost note. The second pitch might also have some A tonality to it, but it's a lot of ghost notes. So I'm going down, up, pluck, pluck, pluck. Thumb, thumb, index, middle, ring. Like my really intense bass face. Wish I could do something about that. All right, and then I'm doing a pull-off to G and just doing a couple of single stroke syncopated ghost notes. Sounds like this. Putting those two together. Next thing is a pop tambourine from the minor third to the major third. Pretty easy, right? And then sometimes I'll sort of play like an open E grace note as a way to get back to, get back to A. This is the last beat of the bar. So the whole thing together sounds like this. And faster. Ah, I realize I forgot a part. You guys didn't let me off the hook. I like that. So after I go, now there's this second part. So I do the same figure on A and G, and I do the first ghost note, and then I do 16th notes, or actually I guess it's not important. They would actually be 30-second notes at the tempo that I think of this song in. But they're just ghost notes. I'm kind of like roughly, loosely fretting or have my hands over G, but they're just ghost notes. Down, up, pluck, pluck, down, up, pluck, pluck. Down, up, pluck, pluck, down, up, pluck, pluck. Really fun thing to do. So that's the other thing that I'm doing. That's the entirety of the pattern. Now, I might play those ghost notes as actual Gs, as actual pitches. You can do whatever the heck you want with it. Try something different. Okay, the chorus part that you heard, I'll just play it really slowly. I'll see if I can break it down for you. It's not as important. There's not as much of what we're talking about here with the double thumbing. There is a lot of that in there, but A lot of other techniques as well that I'll discuss in other videos. My sort of flamenco rasgueado technique, other things like that. Very slowly, it looks like this. And from the side. Alright, to break that part down real quick, I'm slapping an open E, doing a left hand slap, it's a percussive sound, to mute the strings, but also make a percussive sound. And then 2 ghost note plucks. I'm doing them on the A string, but you can also do it on the E string or wherever you like. And then finally, a muted thumb strike, a downwards thumb strike, to round out the whole pattern. Now this next time, because this part is pretty fast when I play it at real tempo, this next part, that next E I slap with my thumb upstroke because my thumb has already come down, so why use more energy than you need to? And then it's just a matter of hammer-ons from B to C, hammer-on with a final thumb upstroke. So slap, hammer, thumb up. The extra E's in there and left-hand slaps, all just single stroke slap stuff with muted ghost notes. Same idea. Now I'm going to be either sliding down from A flat to G or doing a pull off. I'm not sure which I really do in real time. There it was a pull off. Repeat the whole thing again, and then it's rasgueado time, but we'll talk about that another time. Alright you guys, thank you very much for joining me on the maiden voyage video of modern bass applications. I hope you come back and check out others. Let me know what you thought. I ask you please to keep this video to yourself. This is one of the crucial ways that I support myself as a working musician. And there's stuff, I release a lot of stuff on YouTube, a lot of stuff on social media. A lot of things I do are just for the benefit of bass players and my own enjoyment and musicians, at large. But this sort of thing, I really appreciate it if you keep it private so that I can hopefully keep doing this and make more of this content for you guys. Thank you guys very much, and I'll see you next time.